Bianca Motley Broom. I want to welcome you, all of you in person and watching online. We've got a couple of things to cover tonight, and I know that it's Thanksgiving week, and so folks may be watching this a little bit later, but regardless, it's going to be really good information as we move forward. I've got 3 guests here this evening to talk about a number of important things that are going on in our city. And we are going to be first talking about our city manager search, where we are, and answering questions. Then we're going to be discussing the Finding the Flint project. And lastly, we're going to be talking about our budget. Why? Because it pretty much rules everything that we do, and there's a lot of misinformation about our budget. And so I want to make sure that we are providing you the information that you need so that you can be well informed about how your city works. So, without further ado, first of all, I do want to thank Councilman Ambrose Clay. He's over there, and want to thank him for coming out. And but I do want to introduce Warren Hutmacher. He is leading our city manager search, and he's going to give us an update on where the process is and how we expect the timeline to run out.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. Again, my name is Warren Hutmacher. I work for a company called WHW Local Government Consultants, and I've been hired by the city to assist them with the search for the city manager position, and then also 4 other department head positions that are currently vacant, including the Public Works Director, City Engineer, Chief Building Official, and the Airport Affairs Director. And so from a process standpoint, being that it's a council manager form of government, the city manager position is slated to be filled first, and then that city manager will make the ultimate decisions on the candidates for the other 4 positions that would work for him or her. And so what I'm going to focus on tonight is just talking a little bit about what the process is of sort of how we got to this point in the city manager recruitment, where we go from here. And I want to focus on a couple of different things. One is really sort of how do you identify the profile for who is the right type of candidate for the city manager in College Park. And that really entails 2 different elements to it. One is somebody that is qualified and competent to serve as a city manager. And that's incredibly important because that comes with a series of educational attainments, experience, management style, and overall good judgment. But more importantly, what I find is that selecting a city manager for the city of College Park is making sure that they are the right fit for College Park. And that means that they can be able to handle and identify the issues that exist here, be able to ride with the complexities. And you'll see as you get into y'all's budget in a minute, this is a highly complex organization that's going to take a skilled person to be able to navigate. And so from a process standpoint, what we did going into this, one is do a ton of research on the city to be able to understand the operations, how it's set up, and what type of competencies and what type of skills you would need to be able to lead the organization. Secondly, as we look at fit and feel, is to talk with people. And so what we did on that is sort of a 2-pronged approach. One is we did a full community survey asking 12 different questions of the community, asking their input for what types of skills, what are the priorities, what would you advise the mayor and council as you look for your next city manager, and what should this person's highest priorities be going forward. And I'll go over a little bit of the highlights of that. And so that's sort of thrown into the recipe. For how you identify the ideal candidate. And the next step in that process was to talk with the staff, and most importantly was to talk with the mayor and the city council, and meet with them individually to go over a series of in-depth questions and conversations to be able to get their input on who they think would be successful, what kind of skills are they looking for as the city manager reports directly to the mayor and council. And so in taking all of that input together, including the community survey and looking at the complexities of the city and what the competencies required for this type of a role would be, we came up with an ideal candidate profile, and I'll kind of share a little bit of that. And what we're looking for there, the main themes that we got out of this process are looking for integrity, courage to be able to effectively manage within the council manager form of government, College Park is an advanced class in city management with complex service delivery and financial models. Positive attitude and ability to interact with citizens, elected officials, staff, consultants, and businesses. Being able to provide the expertise in advising the City Council on complex or controversial issues. Great communication skills, not only to the internal folks that work here in the government, but also to the entirety of a very diverse community. A customer service mentality for getting to yes. Being a humble and naturally helpful person. Ability to read people, quickly decipher challenges, use good judgment in making difficult decisions. Having a keen eye for talent, being a resourceful problem solver, contributing to the overall profession of city management, and always embodying integrity and focused on the city's long-term best interests. And so that was really the encapsulation of all of those inputs that we received through the process. So sounds like an easy job to find somebody with all of those skills. And so what we did from there is went out and created a 14-page brochure that has a number of different categories in it, really describing the city to an outsider. To say you're not familiar with the city of College Park, so let me tell you about it and get you excited about wanting to be here. Talking about what the position is and what the expectations from the city are going to be. Describing what that ideal candidate is going to be. And then talking through some of the current challenges that the city has, so that gives them a flavor and idea of here are the things you're going to be dealing with if you're selected for this position. And then lastly, talking a little bit about the qualifications, education, experience, compensation, and benefits for the position to give everybody a full idea of what they're getting into on the front end. And so we did some significant advertising with the International City Managers Association through the Georgia Local Government Association, the National Forum for Black Public Administrators, LinkedIn, and then also working through recruitment from my network to be able to bring that to the table. Attended the International City Managers Association conference in Columbus on behalf of the city to be there to meet with potential candidates and recruit folks to the job. And so working through all of those processes, we've come up with about 31 candidates so far. That have gone through the process of reviewing the resumes, scoring those resumes against the ideal candidate profile, and then we brought back a recommended list of 11 to the mayor and council. And in executive session, went through those profiles of those particular candidates, and then they took the recommendations that we brought together, and then so now we're in the process of interviewing those semifinal candidates and be able to accelerate the amount of information that we're getting on each of the candidates, and then the idea after the Thanksgiving break, probably in the either the beginning part of December, we'll be able to present a report to the mayor and council saying here's what we found with these candidates that we've talked with, and that here's what we recommend that you bring in for finalists to come down to the city of College Park and interview with the council, and hopefully be able to make a selection from that more refined group that we really feel like meets the qualifications and also meets the personality and skills and just a great fit for the city of College Park. And that ultimately would be the decision of the mayor and council. My job is just to facilitate the process, to do some of the work, to be able to assess candidates and to provide them with good advice. And so hopefully be able to wrap that process up in January. And I think that's where the council is trying to move as quickly as possible, but also be as careful as possible in making a good selection for the city, and whatever time that takes to be able to make sure that we've looked carefully into everybody's backgrounds and made sure that the council and the elected officials really have a good feel and fit for that candidate that's ultimately going to be selected into that position. For the other jobs, we're going to be basically getting to the point where we've got the candidates pre-selected in a finalist group, and then they'll allow the new city manager to interview those folks and make the decisions based on who they want to select for those jobs. So that's basically my role in the process, and be happy to answer any questions. Is that the appropriate format here? Okay, yeah. Very good. If anybody has any questions. Yeah. I think so. I think it's more subtle probably than, yeah. Yeah, no problem. The question was, were there any changes in the marketing or job descriptions from the previous recruitment? So first, I was not directly involved with the first recruitment, but certainly aware of it, and that was part of the work we did, was to take a look at what was done last time. And it's certainly a professional approach to how you go about a recruitment, and I think the changes were more subtle from the standpoint of really looking at overall experience, how long this person's been, a city manager. Do they really have a lot of experience in similar type communities with similar issues? And then try to attract candidates that we think would be the most successful here. But there was no major adjustments to the qualifications or the job description that I'm aware of. All right. Well, thank you all very much. It was really a pleasure being here, and look forward to the next steps as we go forward, and look forward to working with everybody on this project for the best interests of the city of College Park. So thank you.
Appreciate it, Mr. Hubmacher. Our next presenter is going to be Tasha Hall Garrison, who is our Community Development Administrator, and in that role wears a number of hats within the City of College Park. She is the person to reach out to if you need things in code enforcement, if you have some special projects around the city, she might be the person to talk to as well. And she's here to talk about one of the projects that she's been working on for the last 5 years, which is the Finding the Flint project. And so I wanted Tasha to come to talk to us a little bit about the background of that project, where we've been, where we're going, because there has been some misinformation out there. And I want to make sure that you are getting the information and you know where to find the information, because as we are all moving forward and building that community that we deserve, we should have the facts. So, Tasha, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Motley Broom. Hey, everybody. So I am Tasha Hall Garrison. I serve as a Community Development Administrator for City of College Park under the guidance of Economic Development. And I state that because economic development really is the engine that helps to attract and retain business to the city. Well, who helps to attract and attain residents? Me, along with the wonderful staff at the city. When I say that, I state that I oversee, as Community Development Administrator, I oversee quality of life issues. So things under code compliance that deal with safety and health, but also making sure that we have enough quality green space, that we have education and workforce opportunities, and that someone, no matter where they are born and grow in College Park, that they have equal opportunity to access in the city. So one of the projects that I began working on in 2017 was the Finding the Flint Headwaters. In 2017, I was approached by Finding the Flint, which is a group that was brought together through the Atlanta Regional Commission, to look at how we can create a destination from the Flint River. For those that don't know, the Flint River is a river that actually begins in daylights here in College Park. If you're familiar with Willingham Drive and where Woodward's track is, directly behind there, behind a gate, for the past 35 years, since the 1980s, there has been 7.47 acres that has been gated off. It was owned by MARTA, and it's still currently owned by MARTA, and it was meant to be a detention pond, so that if the river, or not the river, but if the water ever rained or flowed, that it wouldn't flood the local area. And it was located directly a mile between each of the MARTA stations. So in 2017, I was approached by citizens and residents to say, have you thought about doing a nature preserve of the Flint Headwaters area? And at that point, no, because I had not known about it. But I am an individual, and I really have the support of, I feel, my mayor and council and department heads of, if we have an idea that is brought forth and supported by the citizens, we're going to try to make it work. And this was one of those that, after a lot of work, has worked in our favor. After about 2 years of negotiation, we were able to have MARTA's board of directors agree to sell the property to the city of College Park. We are currently in the process with legal of reviewing that purchase and sales agreement so that we can finalize the purchase. We also, in October, submitted to the Department of Natural Resources a grant for their Georgia Outdoor Stewardship Program. So within this grant, it is a fairly new grant from DNR, and what it is a grant to help support more green spaces, more trails. And when I say green spaces, I mean places where if you want to go paint a picture and lay out in the grass, if you want to go see water, if you want to go bird watch, see bees, see flowers, that you can do so right here in College Park off of Main Street on Willingham Drive. In that, we had to do a request to say that if we were to receive the grant for $2.5 million, that the city would have to agree to match. And the match was approved to say that in the chance that we received the grant, that the city would support it by providing that match, what I think would total up to about $900,000 or about $90,000. My apologies. Yeah, my bad. I'm not that good at math. I do community development, not a math. That's why Thea's here. But my apologies. So what was done was a resolution to state that we would fund that match within the next 2 years. So not this budget cycle, but Althea would have 2 years to put into the budget for us to be able to bring this project to fruition. This project was vetted out over the past 5 years at multiple visioning sessions and community input sessions. We met with residents of the local area through the assistance of the Brownsfield Grant. We also had a visioning session with summer camp attendees for Horizons. It was the 7th graders who were able to tell us what they saw in the future of the park. So the park to date, and I have renderings available, the park to date will include a wildlife viewing area. We have plans to bring back some of the wetlands so that we can have a reconstruction of what that area holistically would look like in its most luscious space, as well as we have edible gardens and walking trails planned for the area. So please feel free, if you have any questions regarding the project, to contact me directly. You can reach me at tgarrison@collegeparkga.com. I also want to mention that this is not the only green project that we're working on, because we realize that this is a whole city, and we want everyone in the city to have access to trails and green space and trees. So you will begin to hear more projects as they come into fruition, where you'll have the opportunity to volunteer or to just to enjoy the fruits of the labor. And if there's any questions, I am free to take any questions currently. Yes. Yes.
I'll clarify. But I believe the project total cost of the project is 2.5. But I'll just clarify that the city basically adopted the resolution with the understanding that other businesses will contribute to it. So that match, which I think is about $900,000, we already have about $600,000. Yeah.
My apologies. When I stated that number, I did not include the donations that had already been received. So to date, we have received donations from Microsoft at about $160,000. We've also received donations from U-Haul. We have donations promised to us as well from private businesses to state that if we receive the grant, that they have the funds available. So my apologies. The number that I provided did not take into account the grants that have already been honored towards that project. And it was a total so far to date of about over $300,000 that has been provided for that part. It's 7.47. Yes. Sure. It's tgarrison, TGarrison at collegeparkga.com. Sure, thank you for asking. And yes, we do have an area that is designated for children. We actually have an outdoor classroom that will be designated for the use of local schools. We've already spoken with Woodward Academy about being able to have access from their track onto the property for their classes, as well as having the additional working with College Park for police for security. We've already planned and spoken with College Park Elementary as far as letting them know that there will be some opportunities for more STEM work with the project. Yes.
Is this a park that will be open and accessible for, say, walkers who are 5 a.m. walkers and who may want to walk on the trail? How will you handle that in terms of the hours of and availability of the green space area?
Sure. So this project has been a collaboration not only with economic development, but also with recreation, public works, and finance. We do plan to implement the same times as the current parks, which is typically about dawn to dusk. It would be added to their schedule. And I also wanted to add that this park is planned to be ADA compliant because we want it to be accessible by all. So there will be paths that will be, they're not going to be paved paths. We do want to work with more natural sources, but we want to be able to give everyone the fair opportunity to enjoy the park. So that's planned as well. Thank you. Yes. It's off of Willingham Drive, so right directly behind Woodward's Park. Once you turn from Main Street and you take that right, it's right behind the track, and there is a gate. And if you look at it currently, all you're going to see is just a fence. But behind that fence is 7.47 acres and the first daylight of the Flint River. We have in the past, when we had public meetings, invite the public to be able to join and see. That was one of the features of our community meeting through the Brownsfield grant, was to give residents an opportunity to go on the property. So if we do have that come up again, or once we purchase, I'm certain that we will, because I will want to share it. It's an amazing property. It's like stepping back in time. So we will make sure to advertise and open that once available.
Will there be any shops or eatery areas along the trails, or is it accessible as just an open park place?
It will be an open park concept currently. With the economic development in mind, we did think about having an opportunity to have maybe food truck or parking for the future, but currently the focus is just the nature preserve portion.
Ms. Garrison, will this green space be available to, say, the citizens of East Point as well? Or is it designated for our College Parkians?
It
Who
is
will
for,
have access to the green space?
Yes, we don't check IDs at our park, so it would be welcome to anyone to join. East Point does have currently nature preserves, but I don't think anyone in the South Metro has a nature preserve just like this. So College Park will definitely be the attraction once this gets developed. Sure, yes.
I guess the bottom line there is hope, or the best scenario is that outside sources will make up for our matching funds.
Yes.
Is that correct? And
correct.
we're headed in the right direction on that.
Yes.
And when she's talking about East Point, one thing I thought about is Willingham, right? I guess on the other side of the road is East Point.
Yes, it is.
So I wondered if there has even been a conversation at all with any kind of maybe partnership with East Point, since really it's right in their backyard.
We have. There is a slight sliver of property that adjoins that East Point owns, so we have discussed that with them as far as being able to work together on that portion. This project was also included within the Willingham Corridor LCI Livable Centers initiative. In that would include the businesses that you discussed. That plan looks at how the corridor would be redeveloped towards the future to be more inclusive of residential as well as commercial opportunities, and it is available online. The final draft is, but that does tie into our work not only with East Point but with Hateville. Yes.
Assess the green space area, because I know that Woodwood Academy has a parking area where they park their school buses, and that is a pretty big lot. So where would we be able to park in relation to that?
Sure. So there will be parking on site. We have designated an area as you enter as parking. There also will be access for people to walk in because it is adjacent to the community. So people will be able to walk, or residents will be able to walk from their homes onto the site, as well as we do have the access for bikes and potentially golf carts, because that is an interest of the community in that area. So there are plans for multimodal transportation. And then I would be reluctant to have a microphone and not mention Keep College Park Beautiful. It is a great committee that I am proud to be a part of, and we will be having more events coming forward. I do mention that because one of the hats I wear is code compliance, and under that umbrella is really the focus in keeping residents safe and healthy. And as you may notice, more and more in our community, you will see some of the vacancy, some of the homes that have been left in a kind of blighted or deteriorated state being addressed, because we may not see the day-to-day effects of the broken window method, but it is true. When you begin to see blight and broken windows in your community, you begin to be more accepting of that in your community, and that's one thing in College Park we don't want to be acceptable of. Another thing as well is we are looking for additional opportunities to increase attainable housing, so we will have more information of that as the program grows. All right. Thank you all for your time. Oh, sorry, yes. Yes.
In conjunction with the development of the nature preserve, what will be the efforts to keep that area beautiful, to pass through and pick up the litter and collected trash, that, especially when you have waterways and water banks and such?
I'm glad that you asked, because this project has truly been a collaboration not only with the City of College Park and Finding the Flint, but also with the Conservation Fund. Through some relationships that we had with the ARC, we are able to get a new technology that is available as far as to monitor the water flow as well as the water quality and kind of height of the water. As far as for litter itself, we are planning this for really what the city is responsible for, in the essence of we are planning this with the desire of Public Works to be able to assist with it, but we also are placing this information out so that we can get more buy-in from the community, so that if we do need community cleanups or if we do need assistance from volunteers and Keep College Park Beautiful, that we can go ahead and begin to put that information out. But currently the main maintenance is planned with the assistance of the Public Works. Yes.
Having COVID-19 active, what will be College Park's policy in wearing face coverings or masks, social distancing? What would be the policy for that in that green space?
I can't really answer because that's the future, and COVID-19 has been so diverse in our experience. I would like to state that we began this project in 2017. I can state that it was in 2019 when I really internally began to rally for this project, not because it was just green space, not because this is my community, but because I thought of the individuals who did not have a yard to go out into. I was fortunate that during COVID-19, I was able to go and be at my mother's house. If I had not been able to, I might have been someone that was without a green space. At that time, the parks were closed, so I can't say in the future what would have occurred, but what I can say is that this project will be able to provide a green space and an opportunity for the sunshine and for a nice walk, as well as it's just something about nature. It's something about getting out in nature and having that understanding and that importance of it. So I can't say what the impact of COVID will be in the future, but I can definitely say because of what we felt now and have gone through now, that this project will help to eliminate some of those issues that occurred to us currently. Thank you. Yes.
Will there be any acknowledgement or signage of historic Black communities that were in the area of the Flint River that comes through our community?
Well, for this property specifically, it would not, only because this property initially was not a part of that Junglefoot. Yes, it was not a part of the historic Junglefoot area. I will add, though, that Junglefoot recognition is listed within the LCI, the Willingham Corridor LCI, so there are plans within there to recognize and to honor that community within the LCI plan. So it may not be specifically to the nature preserve property, but it has been addressed to be listed for within that area, within the corridor. Just to give a little history on this property actually was a terracotta mill initially, and over the years it has kind of transitioned, but it was not related to Junglefoot neighborhood initially. Yes. Thank you all for your great questions. Oh, please.
Because I am a numbers person, I just wanted to clarify as far as the funding for the grant. We applied for the grant. The grant amount is we can receive up to $2.5 million, and that 25% match equates to $634,000. Now, the total project cost with the inclusion of land acquisition is actually $3.3 million. So the difference between the grant, the city's match, and the cost, the total cost of the project is $215,149. So collectively, that project will cost us $3.3 million, and the city's grant match is $634,000. However, the difference of $215,000 is also included. So with that being said, we have donations committed from businesses up to $310,000 right now, and we're still basically reaching out to other businesses to contribute to reduce the city's obligation. So I just wanted to clarify the cost. Match to the grant, 25%, $634,000 is the city's match. The difference with the city to the city's match compared to the total cost of the project is $215,000. Collectively, that's $849,000. But we do have commitments from other businesses of $310,000 as of today. Any questions? Okay. Oh, go ahead.
What does that?
I
What
believe
does
we
that
received
entail?
letters.
What does that mean?
So to date, we have 2 commitments. Basically, when I say commitments, meaning they have check in hand ready. One is U-Haul, the other is Microsoft. We also had another donation from Coca-Cola. That is a commitment which is written, which states in the letter, if we are to receive the grant from DNR, that they in turn would immediately be able to provide payment. So 2 of them are check in hand commitments. The other one is a letter of commitment pending the receipt of the grant.
I guess I'll just stay up here. My name is Althea Floyd Bradley, and I am the Director of Finance and Accounting and Customer Service, and I also oversee the Purchasing and Tax Administration department as well. Today I have a budgeting brief that I will review with you all. I would prefer to interact between slides so that, because it's a lot of information to take in, and I'll be talking for a while. So after every slide, I'll look up to see if anyone has any questions, and then we'll move forward from there. Okay. If you don't have a copy, can you raise your hand so that the gentleman or the mayor will bring you a copy? Mayor, there's more up here. Right there? Okay. You have to excuse me because I have my notes and I have to basically move this PowerPoint forward. All right, the budget document does play a critical role in setting the overall direction of the city. My goal today is not to overwhelm you, but to give you a better understanding of how this all comes together. Okay, the city's total adopted budget is $148,760,807 for fiscal year 22-23. I do have the definition of the fiscal year, but the city's fiscal year begins every July 1st and ends on June 30th of the following year. So we are just at the beginning, the first quarter of our fiscal year for 2022-2023. Well, the way governmental accounting works is that we have a system and we're required to organize and operate on a fund basis. A fund is a pool of money set aside for specific purposes, and the city's accounting structure basically takes that into consideration. Think of it as someone having multiple businesses and setting up separate accounts for each of those businesses, so in an effort to not commingle those funds. And that's basically the way we conduct our business. The city has 25 funds. I know Councilman Clay, you asked that question at your last meeting, and we do have about 25 funds. We did add funds. What makes up these funds? Within these three categories, the general fund, $36,829,461. That's 25% of the overall. Our special revenue funds, $22 million. That's 15%. And the largest of them all are the enterprise funds. I know you only see three categories, but within these three categories, I have 25 funds. And I'll move forward. List of funds, the first being your general fund, which is the main fund of the city. It pays for the city services related to providing central services to our residents. That includes your police and fire, your mayor and council, finance, HR, and so on, even public works for your streets and building and grounds improvements. The next fund are the revenue funds, made up of multiple funds, and they're used to account and report the proceeds of specific revenue sources that are restricted or committed, sometimes by law, for specified purposes other than debt service and capital projects. A couple of our funds, hotel motel, that accounts for the hotel motel tax that we receive on a monthly basis. We collect those from the hotels, and they remit those funds to us on a monthly basis. Several funds are funded by the Hotel Motel Fund. DMO, I'm not sure you all are familiar with the DMO, Destination Marketing Organization. The GICC Debt Service, the Hotel Motel Fund, helps fund those operations, and also the general fund. We transfer about $2.5 million every year from the Hotel Motel Fund to help subsidize the general fund. The car rental tax, those are proceeds, also restricted by state law, and can only be used for capital expenditures related to public safety, recreation, and convention centers. We have a new one on the list, which is the most fund. That's the municipal option sales tax. It's a 1-cent tax that applies to primarily fuel sold within city limits. And our E91 surcharge is a charge imposed on a consumer that basically has a communication transaction as far as your cell phone bill, cable bill, your charge a surcharge, and that comes back to the city through the state. Our next fund are your enterprise funds, which account for operations that are financed and operated in a manner similar to a private business. So with that being said, for the goods and services that are being provided, you have any questions? Okay. For the goods and services that are being provided, they should actually pay for themselves. So these funds, in actuality, are supposed to be set up to be able to fund themselves. They all don't, but most of them do. Like some of you may see these on your utility bills, water and sewer. That's a public works function, but we provide a service, so you pay for that service separately. That's more like a business. Electric fund, your sanitation fund, and your stormwater. Those are related to your utility services that you receive. We also have the BIDA fund, the Business Industrial Development Agency. Authority, same thing. So any questions on this slide? Go ahead. Grant funds, there's multiple grant funds. Sometimes we receive grant funds from the county, CDBG. We received a new one. I had to create a new fund for the ARPA, which is the American Rescue Plan Act. Passed by the federal government, so those account for those funds we may receive from the federal level, state level, or the local level. Yes, sir?
You may have mentioned it, but I don't hear very good anyway. So that most fund.
Yes.
What is?
That's the municipal option sales tax.
Okay.
Yeah, that was just passed last year. Let's the mayor talk.
That was a bill that was passed by the legislature this year, signed by the governor, and we started receiving, the collections started happening October 1st. And so we will have the opportunity to use that for sewer, because basically the city of Atlanta was under a consent decree by the federal government to improve their sewer system, and we're tied into it, along with Hapeville and East Point. And so for years now, we've had to go along and make improvements as they've been making improvements without the benefit of the municipal option sales tax, which Atlanta was permitted to get. And so for years, this has been something that has been on the radar of all the Tri-Cities and trying to establish some equity, because we've been sort of taken along for the ride in improvements to this system. So this year it came together. And so there is an extra penny that is a sales tax throughout the Tri-Cities that will be used for us to make those improvements. And I had a question for you. Can you talk a little bit about how these funds have been impacted by COVID?
Okay. Since I've already discussed the enterprise fund, I can discuss the COVID impact, the impact of COVID. We collectively, the city's revenue decreased over $20 million during COVID. And the fund that was impacted the most were our enterprise funds, especially those that rely on other funds to basically run their operations. And that's because some of our special revenue funds, like hotel motel, where occupancy dropped to about 10%, 15%, we normally bring in about $13 million from that hotel motel, and we transfer about $6-7 million to the GICC in the arena, and it wasn't available, not at the level that we're used to operating. So the GICC took a hit, our hotel motel took a hit, and in turn GICC took a hit. Our car rental tax, we have an agreement with the city of Atlanta, and every year we collect and remit the car rental taxes, because that car rental tax, the car rental compound is basically sits within the city of College Park, and by law, we basically have to collect it. But we have a contract with them where every year we collect the funds and remit it so they can pay off their debt service, and then they in turn will basically send us $3.2 million. Well, there was an agreement that said if the car rental taxes fell below a certain amount, that they didn't have to pay us that $3.2 million that year. Then there was a caveat to it that next year, if it actually increased to the level where they could, right? They did not have to pay us back for that missed year. So they missed a year because revenue went down, but that next year it came back. And because of that, we missed the $3.2 million payment. Had the revenues basically remained under that threshold, they would have to pay us double. But because it didn't, they basically were allowed to skip a year based on the contract. So it was legal. So that as well was impacted. Our general fund, we froze over 100 positions. Over 100 positions. We just brought back 100% of our positions in fiscal year 2022, 2023, which our budget, once you review it, it should reflect a slight increase in salaries because we froze it for actually 2 years and then basically brought it back at 100% this year. Am I missing anything? And we cut expenses. He asked our department directors, we cut expenses to the bone. We cut capital. And I'll go on and on because there's more to talk about once I get further into it, because you'll see all of the evidence of impacts of COVID when you actually get into it. Go ahead.
To go back just for a second on the enterprise fund, and if I have this, the convention center and the Gateway Arena, are they, out of all that group, really probably the only two that do not cover their own expenses, basically?
And sometimes BIDA.
Would that be, I mean, that's a correct statement, though, right?
Yes, that
I mean,
is a correct statement.
That's always been the case and always will be, probably.
And the golf course, too. Not as to the extent of the other two, but the golf course needs a little help as well from the general fund. Oh, perfect person.
Hello. So I previously served BIDA as the Assistant Secretary Treasurer. And what BIDA is the entity that helps to buy and sell property for the city. So how it works with property is that being a city, we are not allowed to buy or sell property. If we did not have the development authority, then anytime the city wanted to buy or sell property, it would have to go to a vote before the residents. So what BIDA is the authority. It has a representative from each ward, in addition to the mayor and mayor pro tem, who serve on the board, and they help to make decisions as to what businesses or what developments can maybe be incentivized or maybe can, I would say, have some assistance or different toolbox economic development tools to be able to come into the city. You're welcome.
And it also is a method of issuing debt as well. We would go through our BIDA fund to issue debt on behalf of the city, because the city itself isn't allowed to issue debt, but we can go through BIDA and issue that debt. Any questions?
The city can buy and sell property, but we use the development authority as that tool and issuing debt. And so in terms of issuing debt, that basically means like when we put bonds out to get financing to build things, the development authority is the mechanism by which we are doing that. During COVID, we, and I don't think this is part of your presentation, but during COVID, we refinanced some debt because we were able to push out payments for a little bit longer. We were able to pay on interest only and have some of the principal payments come a little bit further down the line because of the cash flow issues that we ran into with COVID. And so that was all facilitated through the Development Authority.
Ward makes up the part of the BIDA entity. So how are they chosen, and how long do they serve on this committee?
There's 4 ward representatives, and there's an at-large member. They run concurrent with the terms of the council members that have appointed them, and in case of the at-large member, that person runs concurrent with the mayor.
Yes. Hold on. Let's get the mic for those that may be watching now or later.
Just some distinctions with the various funds. So the operating fund for the city to operate
general fund?
city, the general fund.
Yes, ma'am.
Is 36 million,
Yes.
not the nearly 90 million of the enterprise.
That's your
fund.
enterprise funds.
Yeah.
The 89 million are the enterprise funds, and here's the list.
But the two should not be, they're not conflated. The operating fund for the city is really the general fund.
Yes,
Not
ma'am.
that we're leaning on the enterprise fund for supplement. When we talk
We
about the
do.
budget for the city,
But I'll get into that because that's you're referring to the general fund revenue sources.
Mm-hmm.
And later on in a presentation, I do get into what helps make up, what basically helps fund the city operations.
okay.
And as you were referring to, this is, I have a list of the general fund revenues, the top 6 largest revenue sources for the general fund. And the number 1 is property taxes. We're estimated about 14 million. That makes up for about 38% of the overall general fund revenue. And that's basically the property tax or millage rate is on your property. Our the next 5 largest revenue sources, operating transfers in. I think that's what you were alluding to. The general fund, other funds help supplement the general fund at a tune of $6.5 million. About 18% of that comes from other sources, other funds, primarily the special revenue funds, 2.5 million. About 2.7 million, I think, this time came from the hotel motel fund. We do have car rental tax dollars that's funding a couple of things, as well as the power fund. The power fund this year is contributing about $1.2 million to the general fund overall revenue sources. So there are multiple funds that still help keep the city's millage rate down. Without these funds, we would have to figure out how to make up for $6.5 million in services, in funds. Well, I think the purpose of the council when they basically approve all that development out there was not to put the burden on the taxpayer, to help some of the commercial businesses pay for some of the operations of the general fund. So I think that was the intent, was to alleviate that burden off the taxpayers. So at this time, I don't see, and also your power fund. Many cities use their power fund to supplement their general fund. The next is your local option sales tax. It accounts, we receive it from Fulton and Clayton County. A part of College Park does sit in Clayton County and Fulton County. So that accounts for about $1.1 million, about 14%. I don't know if you've been listening to the meetings where we just approved. I signed for the 10-year contract with Fulton County. My understanding is the dollars aren't supposed to fall below 2021 numbers, which still will be a reduction in our budget, because 2022 numbers are a lot high. Well, not a lot, about $300,000-$400,000 higher than 2021 numbers. So we do lose in some regard, but it's better than what we expected. So no complaints from me personally. Our business licenses accounts for $3.1 million. That's about 8.5%. That helps fund the general fund. And insurance premium taxes, that's tax imposed as percentage of our insurance premium taxes. That's collected by the state through our insurance and property insurance companies. And we receive about $1.2 million of that share. Our electric franchise fees, we do charge a franchise fee to businesses conducting business within the city of College Park. So that's your electric franchise fee that we charge to those commercial properties. Any questions? All right, general fund revenue by sources. This pretty much collectively makes up your general fund revenue by source. Tax revenue, that actually includes your property tax and multiple other taxes, as far as your local option sales tax, your franchise fees. That $24 million makes up a total of those fees and taxes that are charged. Your charges for services, that's primarily your recreation department. Other income could be your miscellaneous income that we receive on a monthly, not a monthly, but an annual basis. License and permitting, fines and forfeitures. And again, operating transfers in 2022. Operating transfers in was about $7.6 million total budget. But this year we took it down about 14%, about $1.1 million. And that helps fund, basically this sums up your general fund revenue by sources. Any questions? Hold on 1 second so we can get you a mic.
Yes, thank you. Okay, when it says interest, is this the interest from all categories in terms of tax revenue, or just specific to one particular tax?
We have investments, and that interest comes from the investments. Yes, ma'am. You're welcome. General fund expenditures, your tax dollars at work. Sorry, go ahead.
Other income. Did I miss that, or what? Where did that come from?
Miscellaneous income. It can come if it's not. If we don't have a line item for it. Like, say for instance, we receive insurance from like someone hit the police door, so their insurance pays what is it called? They basically, when we receive a claim, that's it, the word claim. When the claim is paid out, we receive the revenue. We don't have a specific line item for it. It falls under other income because we don't normally budget for claims. So that things like of that nature will fall under miscellaneous revenues. Things that normally are one-time windfalls, things of that nature normally fall under other income. Yeah, filming as well. When they come in to film within the City College Park limits, they pay a fee, and that's miscellaneous income, other income as well. Your tax dollars at work, your property taxes represent 38% of the general fund revenues. This diagram basically shows what each dollar pays for. So to break it down, your public safety, your fire and police make up for 58% of your overall general fund budget. Your general government, which consists of mayor and council, finance, HR, IT, public works. Those, other than those covered under the enterprise fund, public works includes public work administration, buildings and grounds, and streets. That basically, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. The general government makes up for 20%. That only, it does not include public works, I take that back. It only includes mayor and council. It includes the city clerk, finance, IT, communications, list goes on and on. It includes those specific departments. That makes up for 20% of your overall general fund expenditures. Parks and Recreation makes up for 9% of your overall general fund expenditures. Public Works, this is the right one. Your Public Works department includes the Public Works Administration, streets, and buildings and grounds. I did mention earlier, I didn't want to confuse you with the two. There are Public Works departments under your enterprise fund. This is separate. Your general fund only covers 3 of the Public Works Department's funds, Public Works Departments, and that's Public Administration, Streets, and Building and Grounds. Those are the only 3 departments the general fund covers under Public Works. Now moving on to Community Development, that's Tasha's department. That accounts for 3% of your overall general fund budget. Inspections, 1%, engineering, 1%, and your debt service accounts for 1%. And those are, your debt service are primarily leases that the city has entered into for fire apparatuses and police equipment. Hope I didn't confuse you or lose you. If you have any questions, please ask. Thank you.
When you say fire apparatus, are you speaking of the fire vehicles themselves as well?
I'm only speaking of the fire trucks when I say fire apparatus. Yes, ma'am. She has good questions. I like that. She's interacting. Yes. Yes. No. I don't want to read to you. I want us to interact. I want you to ask questions. Okay. Yes. Yes.
This may be a question more so for Tasha. With the business licenses, do we have someone in position who is managing that when the businesses do not pay their licenses, do not pay their taxes?
Yes, so that is a collaborative effort that is undertaken by the city clerk's office and under her direction, the business license and permitting. I work with them through code compliance. So each, basically, they keep a listing of the businesses. Businesses have to renew their business license in March, is mandated. So we do annually go and check the business license, but we also do verify through daily inspections, as well as if we get a complaint or if we go, then we will go verify as well. So yes.
Any other questions? Going once? Okay. Moving on. Okay, this slide is just a schedule which lists each general fund department for fiscal year 2023. It compares the current year to the prior year, and this is just the budgeted numbers. And the pie chart breaks out expenses by use. Now, if you look at the pie chart, our personnel services account for 70% of the budget. That's $25.7 million. Now, if you look at the 2022 amended budget for personnel services, it seems like it went up drastically. And part of that reason is because we received ARPA funds, about $2.8 million last year, and we received $2.8 million this year. So what the state requires is that we actually set up a separate fund to account for those expenses related to the ARPA fund. So I had to move our expenses, and that includes moving the budget for those expenses to what she was asking about, the grant fund. So not clearly, but actually that 18 million is understated by almost over 2.9 million, almost $3 million. So we actually understate that because those expenses are sitting in a totally different fund, and the budget is as well. So that's why you see a 40% increase. But what also contributes to that increase is remember I told you all, we froze about 100 positions in the prior year. So this year's budget represents 100% of the positions being funded, with the exception of 10 in the police department, because we basically came to an agreement with the police about the 20% increase that we would freeze 10 of those positions in order to cut down on the cost of increasing the police salary. So that's why you see I wanted to explain that 40% increase in personnel. There's an explanation for that. Also, if you look at capital, go ahead. American Rescue Plan Act. She asked the acronym for ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act.
So ARPA is the first time in the history of the federal government, basically, that every city, town, village throughout the country was able to get a direct payment based upon population. And so most of the time when we receive funding as a city, we have to go through the federal government, or we have to go through the state, or we have to go through the county. But this is the first time that everyone received direct payment in their bank accounts to be able to have the flexibility of figuring out how best to use those funds after the COVID-19 pandemic. And so in our case, most of it went to revenue replacement. We haven't had as much flexibility because when you heard Ms. Flora Bradley say it earlier that we sustained losses north of $20 million, we got, was it 5.7? $5.7 million. And so, I'm not the math person, but I know there's still a big gap. So the ARPA funds were very much welcome and needed, but you will see other cities, and I was at National League of Cities last week with their City Summit Conference, and there's thousands of people from all over the country talking about all the great things that they're doing with their ARPA funds. We were a little bit more constrained on our end because of the fact that those enterprise funds really did have a huge impact on our budget for the 2 years that COVID was at its height. That's why the census is so important. That's right. That's right. We have to remind everybody every 10 years, but we got money based upon 13,942 people. Or was it 930? Because I don't think the census numbers had been finalized when they came out with the ARPA. I'm not sure. Anyway, we lost 12 people. So we went from 13,942 to 13,930. But we got money based upon every single person who had been counted. And so you're right. We got to talk about it more than once every 10 years, that it is just vitally important about how we receive resources, whether they are direct or whether they are from the county or the state or the federal government. That population matters.
Okay, back to the general fund department's total expenditures by use. If you pay attention to the capital outlay line, you will see that we had $5.1 million budgeted in 2022, but $0 in 2023. Well, During the budget process, the council wanted to fund the capital requests in advance because of everything that was the impact of COVID. They slowed down this basically being able to get the police vehicles in time and in a reasonable time and things of that nature. They decided to advance fund those capital requests, and they totaled about $4.4 million. So you do see that reflected in 2022, which in turn will roll forward to 2023. But what it did was allow the departments before the beginning of the next fiscal year make those purchases in advance so that those items could come back at a reasonable time. So I think we did receive about, I want to say 12 police vehicles. So that was actually helpful and an advantage for the departments. And I won't read through this, but we did discuss the special revenue funds. You have a copy. There'll be a copy online. And this basically shows the makeup of our special revenue funds. And with the grants funds, you don't see anything budgeted for fiscal year 2023, but what I typically do is at mid-year is basically those grants that have been approved, secured. I will introduce a budget amendment to the council for approval, and they typically include the amendments to the grant funds for those projects that have been grant funded and approved to move forward. Any questions on my special revenue fund? Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to ask, I know that the mayor fought really hard and was successful in getting a raise for city personnel. Would that be reflected in this report that we're looking at for 2023 as well?
Yes, ma'am, and it's reflected across the board. When you look at the different fund, the general fund, that $25 million represents the increase for the police department, and for staff. It was a 20% increase for the police department specifically, and a 5% increase for other city personnel. You're welcome. And Councilman Clay, they pushed for it. They were in support of it. I believe all the council members were in support of it. Yes, ma'am.
Just a line item on the general fund. The EMS, the emergency medical service, is negative 66%. What is that difference?
Because it includes purchase of two ambulances. I think they total about $536,000. Recall I said that the council approved to advance fund some of these requisitions. Okay, so that's why you see a 66% increase, because in 2023 there is no capital budgeted, because we basically funded it in advance of this budget. Enterprise fund, same idea, basically comparing the prior fiscal year amended budget to the current. Gives you an idea of your revenue sources for those funds versus the expense uses. Any questions on this slide? And our next budget timeline, what does that look like? Our budget cycle begins in January, where we basically provide the departments with a list of instructions on how to complete their budget. We don't tell them what to budget, but they basically have the instructions on how to submit, how to move forward, and the timeline for meetings and things of that nature. In February, the department heads submit their budgets electronically, And in March, they sit down, each individual department sits down with the city manager, myself, and other staff members, and go over their budget. And then in April, whatever we basically agree on in March between the city manager and the department directors, we present that to council. And I say, please, in April, check back March and April to go on our website and check back for those budget dates, because as I would say, this is your time to shine. If you want to see changes, if you want to understand what's going on during the budget process, what's being added, included, excluded in the budget, this is your time to be there and get involved during the budget workshops. We normally hold it online as well. There's normally 5 budget workshops, so you have plenty of time to plan. We'll have the schedule out in advance. This is your time to shine, to come down and make your voices heard, or just to listen in. We appreciate feedback. In May, that's the first public hearing, and in June, we adopt the budget. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Hello. I know the first gentleman who spoke was saying that they were looking to fill the city manager's position. So are we assuming that the position will be filled by March, when the city and the department will come together for a review of the budget? And if not, what's the process if you haven't filled that position, or does it?
It doesn't hinder it. We have to move on. We have to adopt We have to adopt a budget, and we have to basically have reasonable amount of time to review the budget, review it with the council. So if we don't bring anyone in by March, the interim city manager will serve in that position.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Where can you find a copy? You have one. Also, there will be another copy of the budget in brief on the city website. It is not yet. Hopefully it will be there by Monday. I'm not sure if staff, I haven't sent it to staff yet, put it that way, but by Monday we'll make sure that this is up for you to print yourself out a copy or save a copy and review at a later date. Any questions? For asking questions. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, it is. It's not as exciting as, you are steeped in it and you live it day in and day out. But I do think it's a really important conversation so people get a better understanding of how this city works. And you know, you've got the information, and I think it's collegeparkga.com, not City of College Park, but that's all right. We know the website. It says City of College Park. All good though. But sorry? That's right. She's not IT or communications, right? She's got every number right on all the preceding pages. Yeah. And we appreciate you for it. This is not a small task what you do on a daily basis, and it is vitally important work to make this city run, and greatly appreciative of it. There is one other thing that I'm going to end this on. The amazing, fantastic Officer Anthony Paniagua, who's going to tell us a little bit about what's going on in the city, and the Employee of the Month. If you have not seen her face on the screen out front in front of City Hall, here she is in the flesh, Officer Christine Dixon. They're going to tell you a little bit about what's going on in our city.
You want to stand on the table so I can see you? Hey, how's everyone doing? I'm Officer Paniagua. I'm going to slow it down. Officer Paniagua. Means bread and water. But everybody calls me Officer P. And Officer Dixon, Employee of the Month. So the first thing I want to talk about is the light up, the tree light up that is on the 28th from 6 to 8. And it's going to be right there where we do National Night Out. in front of the auditorium. You see the trees right there next to City Hall. We already semi-decorated ours. I think we are going to win. I'm looking forward to it. Ours is going to be the best, but they also got a 15-foot tree that is really pretty. Then after that, we got the Senior Summit. I passed out flyers for that. And that's going to be on the 29th. Senior Summit is going to be on the 29th. And the flyer that I passed out, it let you know how to reserve a spot if you want to go, your parents to go, anything like that. Then after that, we got the Christmas parade, which is the 3rd. We're going to be throwing, I'm going to be passing out a lot of candy. A lot of candy. So we expect a large crowd. We expect this parade to be the biggest one. We got other jurisdictions, other police jurisdictions coming as well, unlike the previous years. So I think it's going to turn out really good. After that, we have this class happening, and the class is for understanding Georgia handgun laws. And the flyer that I passed out, it has the number on how to register. There's no walk-ins, you got to register. And it's going to be on December the 10th, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So that's what I wanted to talk about. You got anything?
Oh, well, I mean, we know the holidays are coming up.
Microphone?
Just a couple of days. I used to not talk with a microphone. Feels weird. But basically, we just want everyone to be safe. You know, enjoy time with your families and friends, loved ones. And more than anything, of course, you know, there are people out there that linger around and commit crimes. But just do your best to stay safe. You know, be aware of your surroundings as always. And especially when you all go shopping, please secure your items in the trunk if you're able to. And just make sure your doors and everything is secured. Windows rolled up. That is one thing that we see throughout the city at times, where people may accidentally, you know, forget to roll up their rear window or even their passenger windows. That's very important. You know, just take a few extra seconds just to make sure everything is secure. Take your valuables out. If you can, take them home or to another secure location. You know, that would be suggested, and not leave anything in your vehicles.
Officer P. And Officer Dixon, congratulations on being Employee of the Month. I have a question. I think there may be some confusion when it comes to handguns and handgun laws. Now, if a person has a permit, would you explain to us a permit to carry versus people who are openly wearing their guns on their sides?
See, this is a perfect class to take. Now, before, the permit was to carry concealed. So basically, as long as you open carry, you were not violating any laws. The permit was just to hide it from the public. But now, with the new law, you can have it concealed without, it's not a crime. You don't need a permit. They recommend getting the permit in case you go to another state or anything like that. But you don't need it to carry concealed in Georgia. Not no more.
It is basically, if you have a permit to carry concealed, it is basically
Useless.
useless.
Yes. In Georgia, but it might help you if you go to another state.
It's supposed to be an extension of your home, your ability to protect your home.
No, that was a law that Governor Kemp passed that you can, kind of like Texas, you can open carry without having a concealed permit. So anybody can carry, can have it concealed, you know, as long as they're not a felon. But you having a gun does not give us probable cause to stop you and inquire about your gun or inquire about your criminal history. So if you call us and say, hey, he has a gun, if we go and stop him and find out, just for that simple reason, and stop him and find out that he's wrong his name, his criminal history, and find out he's a convicted felon, but he didn't violate any law, then we basically violated civil rights. Yeah, no problem.
I want to mention one more event. On December 17th, Santa Claus is coming to town and going around with our outstanding fire department, and police too. And I don't know if you know this, and this is a really sort of exciting development. And I didn't say it last night at the council meeting, and I kind of forgot. I don't know why I forgot, because this is like amazing news. But so 2 years ago, we started doing that and having Santa go around because we couldn't do the parade because of COVID. And there is nothing more magical than seeing a kid who is completely surprised by Santa being at their front door. And so last year we had some businesses that gave some toys, and it was even better because it wasn't just Santa, it was toys too. Well, Amazon actually saw what we did, and they are contributing $30,000 for Santa Claus is coming to town. Like, it is so exciting, and I can't wait. And the fire department is nice enough to let me actually honk the horn. And so on that note, I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to wish you a very, very happy Thanksgiving. You can watch this as many times as you'd like on YouTube. It'll be available for you. But just appreciate all the questions, and if there's anything that we can do, is there any questions for me before we wrap up? All right. Well, thanks so much, everybody. Have a great evening, and again, happy holidays. Take care.